I am going to buzz through the bowls today. Ladies and gentlemen, that's right. I am a bowl buzzer. This is what I do. I take bowls, I buzz through them. I do not like them, and yet I must, by the call of duty, expound upon them. Welcome to my laundry room. You're watching on the laundry cam, or you're listening from wherever you are on this doomed planet of ours. I am Martin Zender. I know it's an American holiday. I don't worry about that. I don't take holidays. I work every day. Every day is the same to me. An opportunity to glorify God in word, in act, and in deed. Although the cameras aren't on me when I do my good deeds. Although I should have a deed cam. I think I should have a deed cam. A camera that follows me around showing all the wonderful things I do as evidence of this great truth and faith that God has put in me. No, there will not be a sin cam. Somebody wants me to be followed around by a sin cam. No, that would be, that would not be good, I don't think. Although, hey, I've never claimed to be anything but a sinner saved by grace. And while acknowledging that, I also admit that I'm justified by Christ. Both things can operate in you. You still make mistakes, but your mistakes don't condemn you. You don't have to vex yourself over them. That's the big difference, folks. We can admit it. I've always felt bad for these poor, dumb ministers. These guys who's the guy? There's several ministers all over the world. Doesn't matter who. No need to name names here. You know who they are. Jim Bakker, Jimmy Swaggart come to mind right now. But there are others. You set yourself up as a paragon of virtue. You set yourself up as the ultimate Christian, and you set yourself up for disaster because, you fail to be honest with people. You're supposed to be honest with those you minister to. And the best thing, is to realize you're in the same boat with everybody else. It's this minister layperson mentality, this false dichotomy between men of God and the commoners. We're all commoners. Some of us just have gifts. We all have different gifts. We do what we do, but we're all in the same boat of sin and death. But we have an expectation, and the expectation doesn't transform our bodies. Unfortunately, our bodies lag behind our spiritual vision. We're given the truth first, and we latch onto it, and our bodies will be changed. Paul says this in Romans chapter 6. To consider yourselves to have been crucified with Christ, that the body of sin may be nullified. So read the whole chapter 6 of Romans. You'll see what I'm talking about. We come to a realization of truth before our bodies follow suit. I said I was going to buzz through the bowls, and I am. The second bowl is horrible. It's the seas turning into blood. It's not the warm, flowing fluid which fills our veins. If only it was. No, but it's the blood as of the blood of the dead. And so that's how terrible it's going to be. This corresponds to the plague that was visited upon Egypt. The waters were turned into blood. But this wasn't the sea. This wasn't as vast of a curse as what we're seeing in the Unveiling 16. This was merely the rivers of Egypt. Yahweh said to Aaron, "Take your rod and stretch out your hand on the waters of Egypt, on their rivers, on their streams, on their ponds, and all their confluences of water, and they shall become blood." And that's what happened. This is why I'm so amazed how people can look at the unveiling and say, well, obviously that's not going to happen because who ever heard of the sea turning to blood? Have you ever heard of the rivers of Egypt turning to blood? Why is it that everybody will acknowledge that? Oh, yeah, well, that was just a miracle. What do you think this is? It's a miracle. It's a supernatural strike. Waters just don't turn themselves to blood. They don't turn themselves to anything. So, it's like, well, how can God do? How can God? I can't do that. How can God do it? God's just going to do it. It's going to be horrible. Let's go to the third bowl now. See, look what I'm doing here. Look what I'm doing here. The third bowl turns the seas and rivers to blood, just like Egypt. Now, there's some similarity here between the third trumpet and the third bowl. The third trumpet, you will recall, poisoned the waters of the streams, of the rivers, waters where people typically drink from. Screwed it up with absinthe and wormwood, and many died because the water became poisonous. This is different. The water is turning to blood. And the reason is because the saints of God have been killed, and their blood has been shed by the enemies of God. And I told you, God never forgets this, because he loves his saints. He loves the people who profess his truth. And he knows they have hard lives. And he knows that the mainstream religious world will kill them and crucify them and let their blood whenever possible. If not their literal blood, then they'll slice metaphorical veins and shed their allegorical blood. They will hurt you. Blood stands for the soul. The soul is in the blood, Scripture says. Not the life. It's a mistranslation from the King James Version. King James says the life is in the blood. So wrong. The life is in the spirit. Spirit gives us life. It's the soul that's in the blood. The blood is why we feel pain. That's why when you lose blood in your fingers, they go numb, because the blood brings sensation and therefore pain. And the enemies of God have brought pain upon the truth bringers of God for millennia. And it's going to stop. And all the blood that is shed is going to come upon the earth. You say, well, that too bad it doesn't come upon the actual perps, the perpetrators. They're not here. A lot of people aren't here who shed the blood of the saints. Don't worry, my friends. I told you these things are retrospective. The perpetrators of gone by eras, otherwise known as bygone eras, will experience this by seeing retrospectively, while they're at the great white throne, what happened to their fellow persecutors. See, because the people persecuting the saints in the unveiling are of the same constitution as the people who persecuted Jesus, persecuted the apostles, persecuted the prophets, persecuted Moses, who are persecuting you. The only reason your enemies don't crucify you today is because crucifixion is illegal in all 50 states and parts of Canada and Mexico. You can't crucify people today. You can kill them, you can hurt them with words. God takes note of it and visits blood upon the blood shedders. Now the fourth bowl, that's the Son. This is the... it's so humbling that humanity lives on such a narrow confine. Our existence is just like we barely eked out an existence. Of course, this is all of God on this oblate spheroid. And apparently the Earth is so perfectly situated that if we were on Mars, we'd die. If we were, what's the next planet over? Venus? One's hotter, one's colder. I don't know. I forget the order. There's 9 planets. Anyway, there's a 200-degree latitude that we have for survival. So, like, we can take like 150 degrees heat. We can take 150, maybe 100 below zero. Is that 200? I don't know. 200 degrees. There's a 200-degree latitude. I can't do the math. Don't expect that of me. But in other words, if things changed much, we'd be doomed. We have this thin layer of atmosphere. There's layers of things in space that keep our atmosphere where it is. And if something went wrong, if there was a vacuum somehow, sucked all the air out of our planet, we would all die. We would all die. We're just barely hanging on by a thread. As the Earth revolves around itself at some obscene speed and hurls around the sun at an even crazier velocity. I tell you what, if you feel like wearing earth belts, we should all be wearing earth belts. We're moving so fast through the universe. more specifically the Milky Way galaxy. So it doesn't change. It doesn't take much to change this. The sun's nice. It's beneficial. You can see that I have some sun on my face more than usual. I've availed myself of the sun. It's healing. It makes stuff grow. Life depends on it. But God is going to turn it into an enemy. That's kind of, shouldn't say this. Turns the sun into an enemy. That's kind of a cruel twist, a little bit. And because I think it's a cruel twist, I'm not going to comment anymore on it. I'm going to read what A. Enoch wrote on page 432 of the book, The Unveiling of Jesus Christ. Here it is. Let me reapply my headphones here. This is A. Enoch. I think this is poetic in its horribleness. How terrible is it then when the sun, the most beneficent of all God's creations, so far as man is concerned, bursts its benignant bonds and blasts men with overmuch blessing! Exclamation point. Overmuch blessing. It doesn't take much to turn a blessing into a curse. It's like too much blessing already. For instance, when you have a day off, it's a blessing. I have a day off. God gives humanity the Sabbath as a time to stop doing whatever you're doing. Listen, I'm not promoting law keeping. I'm just saying I think it's a good idea to stop everything for a day. But if you stop for 2 days, it screws everything up. That's why Sunday sucks unless you're working. Sunday's a work day to me. So are holidays. This too much of a blessing will kill you. And people plan for retirement, which is a huge mistake. What, are you going to retire? What are you going to do? Sit around and do nothing? Well, I love leisure. Too much leisure will kill you, just like too much sun will scorch you. So God, we live in this narrow place, right, where things work. And the trauma of life, the trial of life, the trouble of life is trying to find what works for you and what doesn't work. Because what works is so close to what doesn't work, and what doesn't work, you're just a discovery away from things working. You got this nice harmony that's, very narrow. The notes of the scale, you have to hit them just right. Like my friend Judy here, she hits this notes just right, and Julie Andrews, got to give it to Julie, she does the same thing. But you take a certain pitch, and if it's off one little bit, it's horrible. You screw the whole thing up. Somewhere. See, I just screwed it up. I just screwed up Over the Rainbow on the second word because I missed the where. Somewhere. If you don't hit it perfectly, you're done for. Same with the sun. If God ups it just one notch, boom, we're all fried. If he turns it down a notch, we all freeze to death. We turn into ice cubes, glaciers, human popsicles. And the oxygen, the same thing. We have the perfect combination of the trees breathing oxygen, us taking it in, dispelling carbon monoxide, expelling it, exhaling it, the trees taking it in. It's symbiotic perfection with us and the trees. We got a thing going with the trees here, and with the plants and with the grass. It's a perfect ecosystem. Oh, by the way, humanity cannot destroy that. Only God can. Sorry, don't mean to get political here, but sometime in your spare time, look up the comedian George Carlin, who poo-pooed this idea that humans can destroy this earth with our little wasteful habits. No, it's funny. George Carlin mocks this whole idea that humans are so powerful, you see. We can overturn what God decrees for the earth. But anyhow, it is fragile. It is fragile, but it adjusts itself. The earth does. It's an organism. But even so, even as it adjusts itself to cellophane and styrofoam, it doesn't take much for God to up the ampage or drop it down a few notches to make us completely miserable. It is grace, my friends, and grace alone by which we survive another day on this planet. And it is the temporary mind you, temporary removal of that grace, which is going to, by physical means, because some people don't get it any other way, drive people to God as they look back retrospectively from the great white throne upon their trials. And there they will come to the realization of the truth that you and I have already come to, that all is of God, and that we live and breathe and are only because of Him. He is ultimately a God of love. The love is tough at times, yes, but love subserves everything He does.